There are some moments in life that seem small at the time, but end up changing everything. A single decision. A brief encounter. One performance. This is one of those stories. It's about a 16-year-old named Marcus Williams standing in a room where he didn't belong, about to do something that would alter the course of his entire life. The Riverside Conservatory Annual Gala. Black tie event. Crystal chandeliers. A Steinway grand piano gleaming under stage lights. And Marcus wearing a catering uniform serving champagne to people who would never see him as anything more than help. But before the night was over, every single person in that room would know his name. Marcus wasn't supposed to be at the Riverside Conservatory at all, not as a guest anyway. His mother, Sarah Williams, had worked the catering circuit for years, taking whatever jobs she could find to keep food on the table. Tonight she was serving at one of the most prestigious events of the year, a fundraiser for the conservatory's new concert hall. Tables set for 300. Donors who could write six-figure checks without blinking. The kind of people who measured success in zeros. Marcus came along to help his mother. He'd done it before plenty of times. Carry trays, refill glasses, stay invisible. That was the job. But the Riverside Conservatory wasn't just any venue. It was the most elite music school in the state, the kind of place that produced concert pianists and symphony conductors, the kind of place that had rejected Marcus's scholarship application exactly 18 months ago. His father, James Williams, had been a driver for the Whitmore family for 12 years. Not just any family. Theodore Whitmore owned half the commercial real estate downtown. His daughter Victoria was the same age as Marcus. When they were kids, Marcus would wait in the kitchen while his father worked, and sometimes when nobody was watching, he'd hear Victoria's piano lessons drifting down the hallway. Chopin, Beethoven, Mozart. He'd sit on the kitchen floor, eyes closed, fingers moving against his knees, memorizing every note. Victoria's instructor came twice a week. $75 an hour. Marcus did the math once. That was more than his mother made in a day. But he didn't need an instructor. He had ears. He had a public library with an old upright piano in the community room. He had time every day after school, before the library closed. He taught himself everything: reading music, proper hand position, the techniques he heard through that hallway door. By the time Marcus was 14, he could play everything Victoria could play, and then some. He added his own style. Jazz inflections, gospel runs, things he heard in church on Sundays. His father used to say, "Music doesn't care where you come from, son. It only cares what you bring to it." Then 2 years ago, James Williams died. Heart attack. Sudden. No warning. Gone. The family fell apart. No more steady income. No more health insurance. No more piano practice at the library because Marcus had to take a job at a grocery store after school. Bagging groceries. Stocking shelves. Anything to help his mother with rent. But Marcus never stopped hearing music in his head. Never stopped feeling the keys beneath his fingers, even when there was no piano to play. When he turned 16, his guidance counselor told him about the Riverside Conservatory Scholarship Program. Full tuition, private lessons, room and board, a chance to study with the best instructors in the country. Marcus spent 3 weeks on his application, wrote essays, got letters of recommendation, even recorded himself playing on his phone, the audio terrible, but the performance solid. He submitted everything on time. Waited. Hoped. The rejection letter came from Mr. Harrison Pierce, the conservatory's music director. 3 sentences. "Thank you for your interest. Unfortunately, you do not meet our admission standards. We wish you the best in your future endeavors." That was it. No explanation, no feedback. Just a door slammed shut. Marcus found out later through Victoria that Pierce had a policy. He didn't accept students without formal training. Didn't matter how talented you were. If you hadn't studied under a recognized instructor, if you didn't have the right pedigree, you weren't worth his time. Pierce believed talent without proper training was just noise. He'd said it in interviews, written it in articles. Raw talent is meaningless without discipline and structure. So when Marcus walked into the Riverside Conservatory that night carrying a tray of champagne glasses, he wasn't thinking about music. He was thinking about getting through the shift so his mother could collect her paycheck. That's all. Just another night of being invisible. The gala was in full swing by 8:30. Donors mingled. A string quartet played in the corner. The Steinway sat on stage waiting for the scheduled performance later in the evening. Some virtuoso from New York. Marcus had seen the program. He didn't recognize the name, but the crowd was excited. He was refilling glasses at a table near the stage when he heard a voice behind him. Sharp, precise, familiar. Enjoying the ambiance. Boy, Marcus turned. Mr. Harrison Pierce stood there holding a scotch, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than Marcus's entire wardrobe. Pierce was in his early 50s, gray at the temples, the kind of man who looked like he'd never been uncertain about anything in his life. He stared at Marcus with the faint smile of someone who'd just noticed something amusing. Sir Marcus said, keeping his voice neutral. He didn't want trouble, didn't want his mother to lose this job. Pierce tilted his head, studying him. I know you. You're the boy who applied for our scholarship program. Williams, wasn't it? Marcus's jaw tightened. Yes, sir. I remember your application. Pierce swirled his scotch. Self-taught, you claimed. No formal instruction. Just, what was it, library practice? He chuckled, and it wasn't a kind sound. Admirable determination, I suppose. But determination isn't the same as talent. Marcus said nothing. What could he say? Pierce had already made his decision 18 months ago. But Pierce wasn't finished. He glanced toward the stage, then back at Marcus. You still play, I assume? Still practicing your little library sessions? When I can, Marcus said quietly. Pierce took a sip of his drink. His eyes lit up with something Marcus didn't like. Something cruel. You know, we have a piano right here. A magnificent instrument. A Steinway Model D. You've probably never touched anything like it. Marcus's heart started beating faster. He didn't like where this was going. Pierce raised his voice slightly enough for nearby guests to hear. Tell me, Williams, do you still think you have what it takes to study at an institution like this? Still believe you can compete with students who've had proper training since they were 5 years old? A few heads turned. Conversations paused. Pierce was creating an audience. Marcus felt heat rising up his neck. I should get back to work, sir. Nonsense. Pierce's smile widened. We're all here to celebrate music, aren't we? And you, by your own admission, are a pianist. So why don't you play something for us? Give these generous donors a little impromptu performance. Show us what raw talent looks like. The trap was set. Marcus saw it clearly. Pierce wasn't offering an opportunity. He was setting up a public humiliation. Get Marcus on stage, watch him fail in front of 300 wealthy people. Prove that proper training matters. That kids like Marcus, no matter how determined, don't belong in places like this. Pierce didn't wait for an answer. He turned to the crowd, raising his voice. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for just a moment. The string quartet stopped playing. Conversations died down. Everyone turned toward Pierce. We have a special treat tonight, Pierce announced, his tone dripping with false enthusiasm. An impromptu performance from a young, aspiring pianist. This young man, Marcus Williams, applied to our scholarship program some time ago. Self-taught, no formal training, but he assures me he has talent. Pierce gestured toward Marcus. I think it's only fair we give him a chance to demonstrate that talent. After all, music should be for everyone, shouldn't it? The crowd murmured, some polite applause, a few curious looks. Marcus stood frozen, the tray of champagne glasses still in his hands. His mother appeared at his side, her face pale. "Marcus, don't," she whispered urgently. "We need to go. We need to leave." But Marcus saw the faces in the crowd, some sympathetic, most skeptical, a few openly amused. They were waiting to see him fail, waiting to confirm what they already believed, that people like him didn't belong here. And then he saw her, Victoria Whitmore. Standing near the back, her hand covering her mouth, eyes wide. She knew. She knew exactly what Pierce was doing. She'd seen Marcus play when they were kids, heard him through walls. She knew what he could do. Their eyes met across the room, and Victoria almost imperceptibly nodded. Marcus set down the tray. His mother grabbed his arm. "Marcus, please." "It's okay, Mom," he said quietly. "I've got this." He looked at Pierce. "What would you like me to play?" Sir Pierce's smile was all teeth. "Surprise us. Play whatever you think will impress this distinguished audience." Marcus walked toward the stage. Each step felt like moving through water. The crowd parted. Whispers followed him. He heard fragments of conversation. "Is this for real? Poor kid? This is cruel. Should be interesting." Some people were already pulling out their phones. He climbed the 3 steps to the stage. The Steinway gleamed under the lights. He'd never been this close to an instrument like this. 9 feet long, concert grand, the kind of piano that cost more than most people's cars. He approached it slowly, reverently. The bench was real leather. He sat down, adjusted the height. His hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against his thighs, trying to steady himself. Behind him, the crowd waited. 300 people, all watching, all judging. He heard someone laugh. Not loud, just a quiet snicker. Someone else whispered, "This is going to be painful to watch." Marcus closed his eyes, took a breath, remembered his father's words. "Music doesn't care where you come from. It only cares what you bring to it." He opened his eyes, placed his hands on the keys, and made a decision that would change everything. For a moment, Marcus just sat there, hands hovering above the keys, feeling the weight of 300 pairs of eyes on his back. The leather bench felt foreign beneath him, too smooth, too expensive. Everything about this moment felt wrong. He was wearing a catering uniform. His mother was somewhere behind him, probably praying he'd just walk away. Pierce stood near the front, scotch in hand, that smug smile still plastered across his face. This was supposed to be Marcus's humiliation, his public failure. Proof that kids like him, no matter how hard they tried, would never measure up to the students who'd had every advantage. Pierce had engineered this moment perfectly. No preparation time, no warm-up, no second chances. Just Marcus, a piano he'd never touched, and an audience waiting for him to crumble. But something shifted inside Marcus as he sat there. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was all those years of being told he wasn't good enough, didn't fit in, should know his place. Maybe it was thinking about his father, who'd driven rich people around for 12 years, and never once complained who'd believed Marcus had something special, even when nobody else did. Maybe it was remembering all those afternoons at the library practicing on a piano that was missing keys, that was out of tune, that nobody else wanted to play. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe Marcus was just tired of being invisible. He looked down at the keys. Steinway. The best piano he'd ever seen, let alone touched. Ebony and ivory perfectly maintained each key responding to the slightest pressure. This was the kind of instrument he'd dreamed about. The kind he'd imagined playing someday, in some distant future where his circumstances were different, where he'd somehow made it past all the barriers people kept putting in his way. Well, here it was, not in the future, right now. And yes, the circumstances were terrible. Yes, he was being set up to fail. Yes, everyone expected him to embarrass himself, but the piano didn't know that. The piano didn't care that he was wearing a server's uniform, or that he'd taught himself, or that his scholarship application had been rejected. The piano was just waiting, ready to be played. Marcus's hands steadied. He flexed his fingers once, twice, feeling the muscles warm. He thought about what to play. Something safe. Something easy. No. If he was going to do this, if he was going to give Pierce and his crowd a performance, it needed to be something that mattered. Something that would either prove him worthy or destroy him completely. No middle ground. Beethoven. Moonlight Sonata. But not the first movement that every wedding pianist knew. Not the gentle, melancholy piece that people played at recitals. The third movement, presto agitato. The movement that separated amateurs from professionals. The movement that required technical mastery most pianists spent years developing. The movement that was all fury and fire and relentless driving passion. It was reckless. Probably stupid. He'd practiced it hundreds of times at the library, but always on that beaten-up upright with sticky keys and dead notes. Never on an instrument like this. Never in front of an audience. Never with everything on the line. But Marcus had spent his whole life being careful, being invisible, playing it safe. And where had that gotten him? A rejection letter. A catering uniform. Watching other people live the dreams that should have been his. Not tonight. Tonight he was going to play like he had nothing to lose. Because the truth was, he didn't. He'd already lost. Pierce had made sure of that 18 months ago. So what did he have to fear failure? He'd already failed in their eyes before he even sat down. Marcus placed his fingers on the keys, found the opening position, felt the cool ivory beneath his fingertips. His heart was pounding, but his hands were steady now. Somewhere behind him, someone coughed. Someone else whispered. He heard Pierce say something to a person next to him, probably some clever comment about the entertainment to come. Let them talk. Let them laugh. Let them expect him to fail. Marcus took one final breath, thought about his father, thought about all those hours in the library, thought about every door that had been slammed in his face, and then he thought about the music. Just the music. Nothing else mattered. He pressed the first notes. The opening arpeggios of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata third movement came out faster than Marcus intended. His fingers hit the keys with too much force, the notes bright and sharp in the sudden silence of the room. The piece demanded speed, but this was rushed. Nervous energy instead of controlled power. He felt it immediately. The wrongness of it. His right hand was ahead of his left by a fraction of a second. Not enough that most people would notice, but he noticed. The rhythm wavered. A note in the second measure came out flat, his finger not pressing hard enough, and the sound died too quickly. Behind him, he heard it. A few quiet murmurs. The rustle of someone shifting in their seat. Someone cleared their throat loudly, the kind of throat clearing that said, "This is uncomfortable to watch." Pierce, somewhere in the crowd, said something Marcus couldn't quite make out, but the tone carried. Smug. Satisfied. "See? Told you so." Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. This was a mistake. He wasn't ready. The piano was too responsive, too perfect. Every tiny error was magnified. At the library on that broken upright, mistakes got lost in the general clankiness of the instrument. Here on this Steinway, every imperfection was crystal clear. His hands were shaking again. He could feel sweat forming on his palms, making his fingers slip slightly on the keys. The piece was accelerating, getting harder, and he was already behind. There was a difficult passage coming up a series of rapid octaves in the right hand, while the left maintained a different rhythm entirely. He'd practiced it 1,000 times, but suddenly he couldn't remember how it went. His mind went blank. For a terrifying second, he couldn't remember the next notes. His fingers froze just for a fraction of a beat, and in that tiny pause, he heard someone in the audience laugh. Not a big laugh, just a quiet snicker. The kind of laugh that confirmed what they'd all been thinking. This kid was in over his head. Marcus felt heat flooding his face. His eyes burned. He wanted to stop. Wanted to stand up, walk off the stage, disappear into the crowd, and never be seen again. His mother had been right. They should have left. Should have walked out the moment Pierce started his little game. But his fingers kept moving. Muscle memory took over where his conscious mind had failed. The notes came back to him haltingly at first, still uncertain, but coming. He pushed through the difficult passage, missed a few notes entirely, but kept going. Kept pushing. Because stopping would be worse. Stopping would mean they'd won. Would mean Pierce had been right all along. The music was supposed to be violent, angry, full of Beethoven's rage. But right now it just sounded frightened, small. A scared kid trying to play something beyond his abilities. Marcus forced himself to breathe, in through his nose, out through his mouth, like his father taught him when he was learning to swim. When you panic, you sink. Stay calm. Keep breathing. Trust yourself. He closed his eyes. Shut out the audience. Shut out Pierce. Shut out the voice in his head screaming that he was failing. He focused on the only thing that mattered, the music. He'd played this piece hundreds of times. He knew it. Not from sheet music anymore. From memory. From feeling. He knew where it went. Knew how it was supposed to sound. He just had to trust himself enough to let it happen. His breathing steadied. His hands stopped shaking. And slowly, measure by measure, the nervousness began to fade. The notes started coming cleaner. More controlled. His right hand and left hand synchronized, working together instead of fighting each other. The rhythm settled into something that resembled what Beethoven intended. It wasn't perfect. Not yet. But it was getting better. The panic was being replaced by something else. Something deeper. Muscle memory. Thousands of hours of practice. All those afternoons at the library. All those nights with his fingers moving against his knees while he hummed the melodies in his head. All of it was still there, buried beneath the fear waiting to be trusted. The piece demanded more speed now. Faster runs, more complex passages. Marcus leaned into it instead of pulling back. Let his fingers fly instead of trying to control every note. And something changed. The piano, this incredible Steinway, that had felt so foreign moments ago, began to feel like an extension of himself. When he wanted power, it gave him thunder. When he wanted delicacy, it whispered. It responded to the slightest touch, the smallest change in pressure. The mistakes became fewer. Then rare, then almost non-existent. His confidence grew with each passing measure. The fear that had been choking him loosened its grip. And underneath it, he found something else. The reason he'd fallen in love with music in the first place. The pure joy of it. The way it could make him feel when everything else in the world felt wrong. He wasn't thinking about the audience anymore. Wasn't thinking about Pierce, or his mother, or the rejection letter, or anything except the music flowing through his fingers. This was why he played. This was what his father had understood. Music didn't care where you came from. It only cared what you brought to it. And Marcus brought everything he had. The transformation happened gradually, like dawn breaking. One moment, Marcus was fighting the music, struggling to keep up with his own ambition, and the next moment he wasn't fighting anymore. He was flying. His fingers found their rhythm, their confidence, their purpose. The notes that had been coming out harsh and uncertain smoothed into something fluid. Beautiful. The way Beethoven intended. This was music that was supposed to storm and rage, but with control. With purpose. Not chaos, but channeled fury. Marcus felt his whole body relax into the performance. His shoulders dropped, his breathing deepened, his arms moved with the natural arc of the piece instead of fighting against it. He'd spent so many years tensing up, trying to force perfection through sheer willpower. But that's not how music worked. You couldn't force it. You had to let it flow through you. The third movement of Moonlight Sonata is relentless. It doesn't give the pianist room to breathe, room to think. It's a cascade of notes, wave after wave, building and building until it feels like the entire world is made of sound. The right hand plays arpeggios that climb and fall like ocean swells. The left hand drives underneath, steady and powerful, like a heartbeat. Both hands working independently, but perfectly synchronized, creating something that no single hand could create alone. Marcus executed it flawlessly now. The difficult passages that had tripped him up moments ago flowed effortlessly. His left hand maintained its driving rhythm, while his right hand danced above it, weaving complicated patterns that sounded impossible but felt natural under his fingers. This was what thousands of hours of practice bought you. Not just the ability to hit the right notes, but the ability to disappear into the music, to stop thinking and start feeling. Behind him, the whispers had stopped. The quiet laughter died. The throat clearing and seat shifting ceased. 300 people had gone absolutely silent because they were beginning to understand that something unexpected was happening on that stage. This wasn't a scared kid struggling through a piece he'd bitten off more than he could chew. This was a musician. A real one. Victoria Whitmore stood near the back, tears streaming down her face because she'd known. She'd always known Marcus had this in him. She remembered being 8 years old playing Für Elise during her lesson and hearing the same melody played back to her from the kitchen 15 minutes later. Perfect, note for note. Marcus had never seen the sheet music, had never touched a piano. He'd just listened and played it back. She'd thought it was magic then, she'd been right. Theodore Whitmore, standing next to his daughter, felt something twist in his chest. James Williams had driven him to work for 12 years, had been unfailingly polite, professional kind. Theodore had thought he'd known the man, but he'd never known James's son could do this, had never known what talent had been sitting in his kitchen, waiting in his hallway, existing just out of sight. What other gifts had he missed? Because he'd never thought to look Mr. Harrison Pierce had stopped smiling. His Scotch glass sat forgotten in his hand, the ice melting, the liquid getting warm. His face had gone from smug to confused to something that might have been concern, because what he was hearing didn't match what he believed about the world. Raw talent wasn't supposed to sound like this. Self-taught musicians weren't supposed to execute Beethoven's most difficult pieces with this level of mastery. Everything Pierce had built his career on, every belief he'd used to justify his decisions, was being challenged by a 16-year-old in a catering uniform. The piece was building now, climbing toward its first major crescendo. Marcus felt it coming, prepared for it, welcomed it. His hands moved faster, the notes cascading like a waterfall. Louder, more powerful. The Steinway responded magnificently, filling the entire hall with sound. Crystal chandeliers vibrated. Champagne glasses hummed. The air itself seemed to pulse with the music. Marcus wasn't just playing notes anymore. He was telling a story. His story. The melody carried all the frustration of being told he wasn't good enough. The bass line drove with the determination of someone who'd refused to give up. The crescendos erupted with the anger of every closed door, every rejection, every moment of being made to feel invisible. And underneath it all, threading through every phrase, was something else. Hope. The stubborn, relentless hope that maybe, just maybe, talent mattered more than pedigree. People in the audience began to lean forward. Some stood up not to leave, but to see better, to get closer to the stage, to witness something they hadn't expected to witness. Phones came out not to scroll through social media, but to record. Because somehow instinctively they understood they were seeing something rare, something they'd want to remember. Marcus reached the technical passages that separated good pianists from great ones. Rapid scales in contrary motion, both hands flying in opposite directions across the keyboard, octaves at impossible speeds, jumps that required absolute precision because one missed note would collapse the entire structure. He executed them perfectly, not mechanically, but musically, every note serving the piece, serving the emotion, serving the story. His eyes were closed now. He didn't need to see the keys. His fingers knew where to go. His hands had played this piece so many times in so many different circumstances that the movements were burned into his muscles, his bones, his blood. This was more than practice. This was part of who he was. The music swelled, grew, filled every corner of the room. And for the first time since sitting down at the piano, Marcus smiled. Because he knew. He could feel it. This was working. Not just working, succeeding. He was doing exactly what he'd hoped to do. Proving that Pierce was wrong. That all of them were wrong. That talent didn't require permission. Didn't require the right background or the right training or the right anything except the willingness to work until your fingers bled and your back ached and you couldn't imagine doing anything else with your life. The first major climax approached. Marcus built toward it, every note a step higher, every phrase more intense. And when it arrived, when his hands crashed down on the keys with all the force Beethoven demanded, the sound was transcendent. Powerful enough to shake the walls, beautiful enough to make hearts stop. In that moment, Marcus Williams wasn't a caterer, wasn't a rejected scholarship applicant, wasn't a poor kid from the wrong side of town. He was exactly what he'd always known he could be. He was a musician, and everyone in that room finally saw it too. The piece accelerated into its most demanding section. This was where amateur pianists fell apart, where even trained musicians struggled, where the technical demands became so intense that only true mastery could carry you through. 16th notes at a tempo that made them almost blur together. Arpeggios spanning 3 octaves. Hand crossings requiring split-second precision. A bass line that had to remain steady and clear even as the right hand performed pyrotechnics above it. Marcus attacked it with absolute confidence. His right hand flew across the upper register fingers, striking keys so rapidly they seemed to multiply. The notes cascaded downward in a waterfall of sound, each one distinct despite the impossible speed. His left hand anchored everything below, providing the driving rhythm that Beethoven used to represent fate pounding at the door. Together, they created something that sounded less like one person playing and more like an entire orchestra compressed into a single instrument. The Steinway sang beneath his hands. This was what the instrument was built for. This level of playing. This kind of music. Every note rang out with perfect clarity, the rich harmonics filling the concert hall with layers of sound that seemed to shimmer in the air. The piano wasn't just responding to Marcus's playing, it was amplifying it, enhancing it, transforming his technique into something transcendent. Marcus's entire body moved with the music now. He swayed with the phrases leaned into the crescendos pulled back during the brief moments of relative quiet. This wasn't the rigid, formal posture of a conservatory student who'd been taught the proper way to sit. This was organic, natural, the physical expression of someone who felt the music in every cell. His father had moved like this when he listened to jazz. Complete absorption, complete, total presence. The audience had transcended silence into something deeper. They'd stopped being an audience and become witnesses. Some people had tears streaming down their faces and didn't notice. Others stood with hands pressed to their hearts. A few had expressions of almost religious ecstasy, the kind of look people got when they experienced something that reminded them why they'd fallen in love with music in the first place. Mr. Harrison Pierce stood like a statue, his face drained of all color. The Scotch glass trembled in his hand, ice rattling. He was watching his entire worldview collapse in real time. For 30 years, he'd believed that proper training was everything, that pedigree mattered, that institutions like Riverside existed to separate the truly talented from the merely enthusiastic. And here was a self-taught 16-year-old playing Beethoven better than students who'd been studying since kindergarten, students whose parents had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on lessons and instruments and opportunities. Pierce had rejected Marcus's application without even listening to his recording, had seen self-taught and no formal training, and made his decision based on policy rather than potential. He'd been so certain he was right, so confident that his standards protected excellence rather than excluding it. He'd never been more wrong about anything in his life. Victoria Whitmore watched Marcus with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. She remembered being 10 years old playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major and hearing it echoed back from the kitchen. She'd asked her instructor, "Can someone really learn to play just by listening?" The instructor had laughed. "No, dear. Real piano requires formal study, years of training, proper technique." But Marcus had proved that was a lie. Not because training didn't matter, but because it wasn't the only path. Talent was talent, whether it came wrapped in a diploma or forged in a public library. Mrs. Catherine Montgomery, the donor who'd been considering a 7-figure contribution to the new concert hall, stood transfixed. She'd been coming to these galas for 15 years, had heard performances from students who went on to international careers, had written checks to support young musicians who'd achieved remarkable things. But she'd never heard anything like this. This was different. This was music being played by someone who needed it, not just wanted it. Someone for whom music wasn't a career path or a prestigious accomplishment, but a lifeline. The only thing that made sense in a world that usually didn't. That's what you could hear in Marcus's playing. Need. And need created a quality that all the training in the world couldn't manufacture. A hunger. An urgency. A sense that every note mattered because music was all he had. Marcus reached the passage that pianists called the wall. A section near the climax where both hands played rapid, parallel octaves requiring perfect synchronization and strength most 16-year-olds hadn't developed yet. Professional pianists practiced this section for months. Some avoided the piece entirely because this section defeated them. Marcus executed it flawlessly. The octaves thundered out perfectly aligned, each note landing with identical force and timing. His hands had built this strength from years of practicing on a piano with stiff, resistant keys. The library upright had been harder to play than any concert grand. It had been like training with weights on. Now, on this perfectly maintained Steinway, it felt easy, natural. The music built to its highest peak, the moment where everything converged, where all the technical demands and emotional intensity collided into something that transcended the sum of its parts. Marcus leaned into it, giving everything he had. His hands crashed down on the keys with the full force of Beethoven's fury. The sound exploded through the hall. Windows vibrated. The stage lights seemed to pulse with the impact. And then, just as Beethoven intended, the fury resolved. The chaos organized itself into a clear, powerful statement. The final phrase of the section rang out definitive and undeniable. Marcus struck the last chord, held it, let it resonate through the space. The piece should have ended there. That's where most pianists stopped. That's where Beethoven's score indicated the conclusion. But Marcus didn't stop. As the final chord of Beethoven's composition faded, Marcus's hands remained on the keys. He felt the residual vibrations in his fingertips, felt the energy still pulsing through his body, felt something inside him that hadn't been satisfied yet. The piece was finished, but he wasn't. There was more to say, more to express. And for the first time in his life, he had an instrument capable of saying it, without planning it, without deciding it. Marcus began to play again. He took Beethoven's final theme, that powerful melodic statement, and transformed it, softened it, slowed it down, let it breathe. And then he began to weave something new around it. Jazz harmonies his father used to play on the car radio. Gospel progressions he'd heard in church every Sunday since he was old enough to sit still. Blues notes that bent and wailed and spoke to something deeper than classical technique could express. This wasn't written anywhere. This wasn't something you could learn from a score. This was improvisation, pure creation in the moment, taking everything he'd learned, everything he'd lived, everything he felt, and transforming it into sound. His right hand played the melody, but not Beethoven's version anymore, Marcus's version. He added grace notes, syncopation, rhythmic variations that made the classical theme swing. His left hand built a foundation underneath, mixing classical bass lines with jazz walking patterns. The Steinway's low register rumbled like a heartbeat, like drums in a church service, like the foundation of the world itself. The audience, which had been preparing to erupt into applause, went silent again. This was unexpected, unprecedented. Classical pianists didn't improvise. Conservatory students stuck to the score. But Marcus wasn't a conservatory student. He'd never been taught what he couldn't do. So he did it. The music evolved. Marcus layered in fragments of other pieces he'd learned over the years. A phrase from Mozart, a progression from Chopin, a melody from a hymn his mother used to sing. He wove them all together, creating something that existed at the intersection of every musical world he'd inhabited. Classical structure met jazz freedom. European tradition met American soul. The music of the elite met the music of the church. And it worked. It shouldn't have, but it did. Because Marcus understood something that couldn't be taught in a classroom. Music was music. The boundaries between genres were artificial, made up, imposed by people who wanted to categorize and control instead of create and celebrate. But music itself didn't care about boundaries. It only cared about truth, about emotion, about the human heart trying to express what words couldn't. Marcus's improvisation grew more complex. His right hand played rhythms no classical composer would have written. His left hand syncopated in ways that would have horrified a traditional instructor. And together, they created something that was undeniably, absolutely, beautifully musical. This was what separated Marcus from even the most talented conservatory students. They could execute what was written. They could interpret composers' intentions. But Marcus could create, could take the building blocks of music and construct something new in real time. This was the gift that came from teaching yourself. You never learned the rules, so you never learned what you weren't supposed to do. The improvisation told stories. You could hear Marcus's father in the steady bass line, reliable, strong, then gradually fading. You could hear his mother in the middle voices, tired but resilient, working harder than anyone should have to work. You could hear Marcus himself in the treble, searching for a path forward, stumbling sometimes, but never stopping, never giving up. He built the improvisation to its own climax, not Beethoven's climax, his own. The music grew louder, faster, more intense. Gospel runs cascaded up the keyboard. Jazz chords added color and tension. The classical foundation supported everything, proving that you didn't have to choose between tradition and innovation. You could have both. You could honor what came before while creating something new. Pierce stood watching, and for the first time all night his face showed something other than arrogance or shock. It showed understanding, maybe even regret. Because what Marcus was doing right now, this was genius. Not the kind that could be measured or quantified or predicted from an application. The kind that just was. The kind that emerged from unlikely places and refused to be contained by anyone's expectations. Victoria was smiling through her tears now, because she'd always believed in Marcus, had always known he had something special. And here he was, proving it to everyone. Not just playing what he'd been told to play, but creating something entirely his own. Something that could only have come from his specific life, his specific struggles, his specific gifts. Mrs. Montgomery had her phone out recording, not because she wanted to post it somewhere, because she knew she was witnessing history. The kind of moment people would talk about for years. The night an unknown 16-year-old transformed a formal gala into something approaching a religious experience. Marcus brought his improvisation toward its conclusion. He slowed the tempo, softened the dynamics, let the energy gradually dissolve back into something gentle, peaceful. He returned to Beethoven's original theme one final time, but played it simply now, quietly, like a prayer, like a thank you, like a statement that said, "I respect where I came from, but I'm going somewhere new." He prepared for his final chord. Not Beethoven's ending, not traditional. Something that combined everything he'd just played into one final statement. One last moment of truth. Marcus struck his final chord. Both hands came down together, spanning nearly 2 octaves. A rich, full harmony that combined classical structure with jazz color. It contained everything he'd just played, everything he'd just felt compressed into a single moment of sound. The chord rang out. The Steinway's strings vibrated, creating overtones that shimmered in the air. The sound was so pure, so perfect, that it seemed to hang suspended, not wanting to fade. Marcus held his hands on the keys, pressing down, sustaining the chord, as long as the piano's mechanics would allow. 5 seconds. 10. 15. The sound gradually decreased the vibrations, slowing the overtones, dying one by one. And then silence. Complete. Total. Absolute. Silence. Marcus slowly lifted his hands from the keyboard. His fingers were trembling now, not from nervousness, but from exhaustion, from adrenaline, from the sheer physical and emotional intensity of what he'd just done. He held his hands in the air for a moment, not quite believing they'd just accomplished what they'd accomplished. He lowered them to his lap, took a breath, realized his face was wet. He was crying and hadn't even noticed. The tears had started sometime during the improvisation, and he'd been too absorbed in the music to register them. Marcus sat on the bench, not moving, not turning around. He didn't want to see the audience's faces yet, didn't want to know their reaction. For just a few more seconds, he wanted to exist in this bubble where he'd done something impossible, where he'd proved something to himself regardless of what anyone else thought. The silence continued. 20 seconds. 25. Marcus's heart pounded so loudly he could hear it, or maybe that was just the blood rushing through his ears. His whole body felt electric, alive, like every nerve was firing at once. Finally, he turned on the bench, looked out at the audience. 300 faces stared back at him, frozen, stunned. Some had their mouths open. Some had hands covering their mouths. Some had tears streaming down their faces. But nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The entire room had been rendered speechless. Marcus found his mother first. She stood near the side, both hands pressed over her mouth, tears pouring down her face. Not tears of worry anymore. Tears of pride, of joy, of a mother witnessing her son do something she'd always believed he could do, but had been afraid to hope for. He found Victoria next. She was smiling at him, crying, nodding, mouthing words he couldn't hear, but understood. "You did it. You did it." He found Theodore Whitmore standing next to his daughter, and the expression on his face was complicated. Pride, yes, but also regret, maybe guilt. The look of a man realizing he'd had something extraordinary in his life and never really seen it. He found Mrs. Catherine Montgomery. She had her phone up, still recording, but her face showed pure wonder. The kind of expression people got when they witnessed something they'd never forget. And then he found Harrison Pierce. The music director stood near the front, exactly where he'd been when this started. But he looked like a different person. The arrogance was gone. The smugness erased. His face had drained of all color. His mouth hung slightly open. The Scotch glass trembled in his hand, ice rattling audibly in the silence. Pierce looked like a man whose entire understanding of the world had just been shattered. Like everything he'd built his career on, every belief he'd used to make decisions, every standard he'd used to judge others, had been revealed as fundamentally flawed. Marcus held Pierce's gaze. Didn't look away. Didn't need to. Because he'd done what he came to do. Not intentionally, not as revenge, but simply by being himself. By playing his truth. By refusing to be anything less than what he was. The silence stretched to 30 seconds. 35. 40. Marcus wondered if maybe he'd actually broken something. If maybe the performance had been so unexpected that people didn't know how to respond. If maybe he should just stand up, walk off stage, and let this strange frozen moment remain strange and frozen. And then somewhere in the back of the room, someone started clapping. The clapping started slow. deliberate. A steady rhythm that echoed through the silent hall. Marcus couldn't see who it was at first. Someone in the back obscured by the crowd. Then someone else joined. 2 people clapping. Then 4. Then a dozen. And suddenly the entire room erupted. It wasn't polite applause. Wasn't the courteous clapping you did at formal events because it was expected. This was explosive. Thunderous. The kind of applause that came from someplace primal. The kind that erupted when people witnessed something that moved them so profoundly they had to express it physically or burst. Everyone stood. All 300 people. Rising to their feet like a wave, hands coming together, creating a wall of sound that rivaled the music itself. They weren't just clapping. They were cheering. Shouting. Some were whistling. Others were wiping away tears while they applauded. The sound washed over Marcus like a physical force. He sat on the bench, overwhelmed, not knowing what to do with his body, with his face, with the emotions threatening to crack him open. He'd imagined this moment secretly in his private fantasies, but the reality was so much more intense than anything his imagination had conjured. His mother broke through the crowd first. She ran to the stage, not caring about protocol or propriety, just a mother needing to reach her son. She climbed the stairs, and Marcus stood and she threw her arms around him. She was sobbing now, full-body sobs that shook them both. She couldn't speak, could only hold him and cry. Marcus held her back, and the audience's applause grew even louder at the sight. Because this wasn't just about music anymore. It was about a family that had struggled and survived, and somehow against all odds was seeing their dreams come true. Victoria pushed through the crowd, next her expensive dress wrinkled her mascara running. She climbed the stage and wrapped both Marcus and his mother in a hug. I knew, she kept saying over and over. I always knew. I told them. The applause continued. It had been going for over a minute now, showing no signs of stopping. People were pulling out their phones recording this moment, the reaction, the celebration, capturing something they knew would go viral, would spread, would become a story people told. Theodore Whitmore climbed onto the stage. He stood in front of Marcus, and there were tears in his eyes too. Your father, he said, his voice breaking. James would be so proud. I wish he could see this. I wish I'd known. I should have done more. I should have. Marcus shook his head. You didn't know. Nobody knew. It's okay. But Whitmore clearly didn't think it was okay. He pulled Marcus into a hug, this wealthy real estate magnate embracing the son of his former driver, and the audience loved it. The applause somehow got even louder. Catherine Montgomery made her way to the stage. She was older, moved slowly, but there was nothing slow about the determination in her eyes. She looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and then she turned to face the crowd. She raised her hands, asking for quiet. It took a moment. People didn't want to stop clapping. But gradually the applause died down to a manageable level. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Montgomery's voice carried clearly despite her age. I have been attending musical events for over 50 years. I have heard performances at La Scala, at Carnegie Hall, at the Sydney Opera House. I have written checks to support young musicians all over the world. She paused, letting that sink in. What we just witnessed surpasses all of it. Not because of technical perfection, though the technique was astounding, but because of heart, because of truth, because this young man played like his life depended on it, because it did. She turned to Marcus. What's your name again, son? Marcus Williams, ma'am. Marcus Williams. She said it slowly, like a pronouncement, like she was declaring something to the universe. You need to know something. What you just did wasn't just impressive, it was important. You proved something tonight. something people in institutions like this often forget, that talent doesn't require permission, that genius can emerge from anywhere, that the arbitrary barriers we construct to separate the worthy from the unworthy are often just protecting our own comfort rather than pursuing excellence. She looked out at the crowd, many of them donors, board members, people who made decisions about who got opportunities and who didn't. "We need to do better," she said. "All of us. We need to look beyond applications and credentials. We need to actually listen to what people can do, rather than dismissing them based on what they haven't had access to." Then she turned to find Harrison Pierce in the crowd. Everyone else turned too. The music director stood frozen, trapped by 300 pairs of eyes. "Mr. Pierce." Mrs. Montgomery said, her voice still kind, but carrying an edge. "You rejected this young man's scholarship application. Would you care to explain why?" Harrison Pierce looked like he wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. His face cycled through several shades of red and white. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. He looked at Marcus on stage, looked at Mrs. Montgomery, looked at the hundreds of faces watching him, waiting. His voice came out hoarse. He cleared his throat, tried again. The application indicated no formal training. "Our policy has always been your policy," Mrs. Montgomery interrupted, her voice sharp now. "Apparently prioritizes credentials over capability. That's a dangerous policy, Mr. Pierce. And an expensive one. Mrs. Montgomery, if you'll let me explain, did you listen to his audition recording?" Silence? Pierce's face answered before his mouth could. "You didn't," Mrs. Montgomery said, "and it wasn't a question. You saw self-taught and made your decision without even evaluating his actual ability." "We receive hundreds of applications," Pierce said defensively. "We can't possibly audition everyone who... But you could have listened to his recording." Another voice cut in. David Richardson, chairman of the board, was making his way to the front. The recording was part of his application. He did everything we asked, submitted everything we required, and you dismissed him without even the courtesy of evaluation. Pierce was sweating now. "David, surely you understand. Our standards exist for a reason. We can't just accept anyone who what?" Richardson's voice was cold. Anyone who can play Beethoven's most difficult pieces better than students who've been training here for years. Anyone who can improvise like we just heard. "Tell me, Harrison, what exactly are our standards meant to exclude?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" Victoria Whitmore spoke up from the stage, her voice carrying clearly. "Because I've known Marcus since we were kids. I've heard him play for years. He's more talented than anyone I studied under, than any student I met here. And you rejected him because he couldn't afford the lessons I took for granted." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Pierce looked around, searching for support, finding none. "Look." Pierce tried a different approach, his voice taking on a patronizing tone that was exactly the wrong choice. "Nobody's denying the young man has talent. But talent isn't everything. Discipline matters. Structure matters. Formal training provides what Mrs. Montgomery's voice cut through like a knife. Because what I just heard was more disciplined, more structured, more musically sophisticated than most of your graduating students." And he taught himself. Which means he has not only talent, but determination. Self-motivation, the ability to learn independently. Those are assets, not deficiencies. Other donors were gathering now. People who wrote the checks that kept Riverside running. Their faces ranged from thoughtful to angry. A man in his 60s stepped forward. Marcus recognized him from the program. "Richard Chen, tech entrepreneur, major donor. I'm wondering how many other talented kids we've turned away," Chen said. "How many Marcus Williamses applied here and got rejected because they didn't fit some arbitrary profile?" This isn't just about one student. Another donor chimed in. A woman in an elegant gown. This is about institutional bias. About who we decide deserves opportunities and who doesn't. Pierce's face had gone from defensive to something approaching panic. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand you're emotional right now. It was an impressive performance. But admission decisions are complex. We have to consider many factors like what Victoria asked, like whether someone's parents can afford $75 lessons, like whether they went to the right prep schools, like whether they have the right connections. That's not fair. You're right. Marcus's mother spoke up, her voice quiet but carrying. Everyone turned to look at her. She was still on stage, still holding Marcus's hand. It's not fair. Nothing about this has been fair. My son has worked harder than any of your students ever had to work. He practiced on a broken piano at a public library. He taught himself to read music. He listened to recordings on free computers because we couldn't afford to buy any. He did all of this while working a job to help pay our rent. And you rejected him without even listening. She looked at Pierce, and there was no anger in her face, just exhaustion, sadness. You didn't just reject his application, Mr. Pierce. You rejected his dream, his father's dream, everything we've sacrificed for. And you did it in 3 sentences. The room had gone quiet again. Sarah Williams's words hung in the air, heavier than any applause. Pierce had no response. What could he say? Everything she'd said was true. He'd made a decision in 30 seconds that had nearly destroyed a young man's future. And he'd done it based on policy rather than evaluation, based on prejudice rather than evidence. David Richardson stepped closer to Pierce, his voice low but audible. Harrison, we need to talk. Board meeting. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Pierce's face went pale. Those weren't the words of a colleague. Those were the words of a superior about to deliver consequences. David, surely we can discuss this privately tomorrow morning, Richardson repeated. Then he turned to Marcus. Son, I apologize on behalf of this institution. What happened to you should never have happened. Riverside Conservatory was founded to recognize and nurture exceptional talent. We failed you. That failure is on all of us, but especially on those of us who make admission decisions. He looked at Pierce meaningfully, then back at Marcus. I hope you'll give us a chance to make this right. Mrs. Montgomery stepped forward again. Marcus, I meant what I said earlier. I will personally fund your education at any institution in the country. Your choice. If you want to study at Juilliard, at Curtis, at any conservatory in the world, I'll make it happen. You've earned that opportunity 1,000 times over. She paused, looking at the crowd of donors and board members. But I'm also making another offer. I will establish the Williams Scholarship Fund, a full endowment to support talented students from non-traditional backgrounds, students who have the ability but not the access, students who might otherwise be overlooked by institutions that prioritize pedigree over potential. The crowd erupted in applause again. Several other donors immediately stepped forward, pledging to contribute. Mrs. Montgomery held up her hand for quiet. Marcus, the question is whether you still want to study at Riverside. After everything that's happened, I would understand if you'd rather go somewhere else. Somewhere that recognized your worth from the beginning. Everyone looked at Marcus. This was his moment. His chance to reject the institution that had rejected him, to walk away with his head high and his future secured elsewhere. Pierce watched, looking like he was holding his breath. Marcus looked at his mother, at Victoria, at the Steinway grand piano that had given him the performance of his life, at the donors and students and board members all waiting for his answer. Then he looked at Harrison Pierce. Marcus took his time before speaking. Let the silence stretch. Let everyone sit with the weight of this moment. He'd spent 18 months living with the consequences of Pierce's 30-second decision. Pierce could wait 30 seconds for his response. "Ma'am," Marcus finally said, turning to Mrs. Montgomery. "I appreciate your offer more than I can express. And I'll accept it. But if Riverside will have me, I want to study here." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Pierce's eyebrows rose. Even Mrs. Montgomery looked surprised. "May I ask why?" she said gently. Marcus looked around the room. At the elegant architecture, the crystal chandeliers, the Steinway that had given him his voice. Then he looked at the people, at faces that had gone from skeptical to moved to inspired, at students in the crowd who were watching him like he'd done something impossible. "Because this place is one of the best," Marcus said simply. "The facilities are world-class. The instructors are legends. And if I come here, if I succeed here, maybe I can help change what this place means, who it accepts, what it values." He looked directly at Pierce. "I don't want revenge. I want evolution. I want the next kid who applies with a background like mine to get a fair shot." Mrs. Montgomery smiled. "That's a very mature perspective." "My father taught me something," Marcus said. "He told me that being angry at people for being wrong doesn't help anyone. Teaching them why they're wrong, showing them a better way, that's what creates change." He turned to Pierce fully now. The music director looked like he wanted to disappear, but Marcus's gaze held him in place. "Mr. Pierce, you were wrong about me, about what talent requires, about who deserves opportunities. But being wrong doesn't make you evil, it just makes you human." Marcus paused. "I hope you learn from this. I hope the next kid who applies with a background like mine gets a fair chance, gets their audition recording actually listened to, gets evaluated on what they can do, not what they haven't had access to." Pierce's throat worked. His eyes were shining. You're a better person than I am, son." "I don't know about that," Marcus said quietly. "But I do know I'll be a better musician, not because of where I came from, but because of where I'm going." The room erupted in applause again, but Marcus raised his hand, asking for quiet. He wasn't done. "Mrs. Montgomery, I have one condition. If I come to Riverside, I want to be involved in the scholarship fund you mentioned. I want to help find other kids like me, kids who are practicing in libraries and teaching themselves and dreaming bigger than their circumstances. And I want them to get the chances I almost didn't get." "Done," Mrs. Montgomery said immediately. "You'll have full input on the selection process. In fact, I'd like you to be on the advisory board." A student on an advisory board, someone in the crowd questioned. "Why not?" Mrs. Montgomery shot back. Who better to identify overlooked talent than someone who was overlooked himself? More applause, more cheers. David Richardson was nodding approvingly. Even some of the other board members looked convinced. Victoria hugged Marcus again. "You're going to change this place," she whispered. "I know it." Theodore Whitmore stepped forward. "Marcus, I want to help too. I should have done more for your family after your father passed. I'm sorry I didn't, but I'd like to contribute to your education. Not as charity," he added quickly, seeing Marcus's expression. "As an investment. Your father invested 12 years in my family. I'd like to return that investment to his son." Marcus felt his eyes burning again. "Mr. Whitmore, please," Whitmore said. "Let me do this. For James. For your mother. For you." Sarah Williams was crying again, her hand over her mouth. Marcus squeezed her other hand. They'd made it. Somehow impossibly, they'd made it. The crowd began to disperse. Gradually, people coming up to shake Marcus's hand, to take photos, to tell him how moved they were. Pierce stood to the side alone, watching. Eventually, he approached Marcus. They stood facing each other. The music director who'd rejected the scholarship applicant. The student who'd proved him catastrophically wrong. "I listened to your application recording," Pierce said quietly. "After I sent the rejection, it was extraordinary. Even on a phone recording with terrible audio, I could hear it. And I convinced myself I'd made the right decision anyway. Because you didn't fit the mold. Because accepting you would mean questioning everything I'd built my career on. He looked down at his hands. I've been teaching music for 30 years, and tonight a 16-year-old taught me that I don't know as much as I thought I did. Marcus didn't respond immediately. What Pierce had done wasn't okay, wasn't excusable, but the man standing in front of him looked genuinely broken, genuinely remorseful. "Will you really change?" Marcus asked, "or is this just embarrassment talking?" Pierce met his eyes. "I don't know. I want to say yes, but I've been doing things the same way for so long I'm not sure I know how to do them differently." He paused. "But I'm willing to try. If you're willing to teach me." "I'm not here to teach you," Marcus said. "I'm here to learn. But if you're serious about changing how this institution evaluates talent, then yeah, I'll help. Because it's not about me. It's about every kid who comes after me." Pierce nodded slowly. "I'll resign as music director. It's the right thing to do. I'm not asking for that. I know. But I am." Pierce straightened slightly. "I'll stay on as a professor if they'll let me. I still have things to teach, but someone else should be making admission decisions. Someone who can see past their own biases. Someone more like," he gestured at Marcus, "like the person you already are at 16. They shook hands. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a beginning. The gala eventually ended. People drifted away still talking about what they'd witnessed, already pulling out phones to call friends, to post on social media, to spread the story. Within hours, videos of Marcus's performance would go viral. By morning, news outlets would be calling. By the end of the week, his story would be everywhere. But that night, as the crowd dispersed, Marcus sat alone at the Steinway for a few more minutes. Just him and the piano. He touched the keys gently, not playing, just feeling them, remembering every note of the performance, the fear at the beginning, the transformation in the middle, the joy of the improvisation, the silence afterward. His mother came and sat beside him on the bench. They didn't talk, just sat together processing everything that had happened. "Your father would have cried," Sarah finally said. "He would have been so proud he couldn't speak." "I felt him," Marcus said quietly. "During the performance. It was like he was right there with me." "He was," Sarah said, with certainty. "He absolutely was." Victoria approached carrying Marcus's catering jacket. He'd forgotten about it entirely. The uniform that had marked him as help, as invisible, as not belonging. He looked at it for a long moment, then carefully folded it and handed it back to her. "I don't need that anymore," he said. Victoria smiled. "No, you don't. David Richardson found them before they left. Marcus, your first class starts Monday. Mrs. Montgomery's already processing your scholarship paperwork. We'll have everything ready by then." Monday. Marcus looked shocked. "That's in 3 days. Is that a problem?" Marcus thought about the grocery store. His manager would be furious. He'd need to find someone to cover his shifts. Would probably lose the job entirely. But he didn't care. Not even a little bit. "No," Marcus said, grinning. "Monday's perfect." They walked out into the night air. Cool. Clear. The city lights sparkled. Marcus could still feel the adrenaline coursing through his system. Probably would for hours. He doubted he'd sleep tonight. Might never sleep again. A group of students who'd been at the gala were clustered outside smoking cigarettes, talking animatedly. They saw Marcus and went quiet. Then one of them started clapping. The others joined in. They gave him a standing ovation there on the sidewalk, these elite conservatory students applauding a kid who'd shown up in a catering uniform. Marcus nodded to them, embarrassed, but grateful. One of the students, a girl about his age with purple hair, approached him. "That was incredible," she said. "I've been training since I was 4. studied with the best instructors money could buy. And you're better than me, better than most of us. She stuck out her hand. I'm Sarah Chen. I play violin. Want to collaborate sometime? Marcus shook her hand, stunned. Yeah, I'd like that. They exchanged numbers. Other students gathered around, introducing themselves, asking questions, treating him like a colleague rather than an outsider. The barriers that had seemed so impenetrable were crumbling already. His mother eventually pulled him away, laughing. Come on, superstar. You need rest. You have a lot of work ahead of you. They walked to the bus stop. Marcus had driven his mom's ancient car here, but it had died in the parking lot, refusing to start. They'd have to deal with that tomorrow. Tonight, they'd take the bus home like they always did. As they waited, Marcus thought about everything that had changed in one evening. This morning, he'd been a grocery store employee with a dead dream. Tonight, he was a Riverside Conservatory student with a scholarship and a future. This morning, nobody knew his name. Tonight, videos of his performance were probably spreading across the internet. But some things hadn't changed. He was still Marcus Williams, still the kid who'd taught himself piano by listening through doors, still the son of a driver and a caterer, still someone who understood what it meant to want something so badly it hurt. That hadn't changed. And he'd make sure it never did. Because that hunger, that need, that understanding of what music meant to people who needed it as much as breath that was his strength. That was what made his playing different. That was what he'd bring to Riverside, and hopefully what would help him change it for the better. The bus arrived. They climbed on found seats near the back. Marcus leaned his head against the window and watched the city pass by. Somewhere in this city were other kids like him. Kids practicing in libraries, teaching themselves, dreaming. He'd find them. He'd help them. He'd make sure they got chances instead of rejection letters. His mother squeezed his hand. I love you, baby. I'm so proud of you. I love you too, Mom. Marcus closed his eyes and smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Media attention he wasn't prepared for. Classes with students who'd had every advantage. The pressure of living up to tonight's performance. The weight of being a symbol, a story, an example. But tonight, he was just Marcus. Riding the bus home with his mother, feeling the ghost of piano keys beneath his fingers, remembering every note, every moment. Every second of the night, his entire life changed because he'd done the one thing he'd always known how to do. He'd played. Some people will tell you that moments like the one Marcus experienced at the Riverside Conservatory Gala are rare. That stories like his don't happen often enough to matter. That the system is too broken, too biased, too entrenched to change. Maybe they're right. Maybe Marcus's story is the exception, not the rule. Maybe for every Marcus Williams who gets his chance, there are 100 others who never make it past the rejection letter, who never get to prove what they're capable of, who give up because the doors stay closed, no matter how hard they knock. But here's what Marcus's story proves. Those doors shouldn't be closed in the first place. The barriers we build around art, around education, around opportunity, they're not protecting quality. They're protecting privilege. They're preserving a system that benefits people who already have benefits and excludes people who've been excluded all along. Real talent doesn't need the right last name, doesn't need the right zip code, doesn't need the right training from the right teachers at the right schools. Real talent needs recognition, needs opportunity, needs someone willing to listen past their own assumptions and see what's actually there. Marcus Williams stood in a room where he didn't belong and played music that changed lives. Not because he was special, but because he was finally given a chance. One chance, one moment, one piano. That's all it took. How many other Marcus Williams are out there right now, working jobs that exhaust them, practicing in whatever spaces they can find, teaching themselves because no one will teach them, dreaming of stages they'll never stand on because nobody's willing to look past where they come from and see what they could become. The question isn't whether talent exists in unexpected places. It does. It always has. The question is whether we're willing to recognize it, whether we're willing to change the systems that overlook it, whether we're willing to bet on potential instead of pedigree. Marcus's story shouldn't be exceptional. It should be ordinary. Every talented kid should get a fair shot. Every dream should get a fair hearing. Every audition should be judged by the music, not the musician's background. That's not idealism. That's just basic fairness. And maybe, just maybe, if we can recognize that if we can build systems that actually value talent over tradition, we'll discover that the world has been full of Marcus Williams all along. We just weren't listening. So listen to the unexpected voices, the untrained brilliance, the kids who learned by ear because they couldn't afford lessons, the teenagers working 2 jobs who can still play Beethoven better than students who've had every advantage, the raw talent that doesn't fit your mold because your mold was always too small. Listen. And when you hear something extraordinary, don't ask where it came from. Ask where it could go if you gave it the chance. That's what Mrs. Montgomery did. That's what Victoria did. That's what eventually even Harrison Pierce learned to do. And that's what changed everything. Not just for Marcus, but for everyone who witnessed what happened that night. Everyone who realized that genius doesn't require permission. That talent belongs to anyone willing to work for it. That music, real music, the kind that changes hearts and opens minds, can come from anywhere. All you have to do is listen.